Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I need to find a name for you guys, so if you guys have any clever ideas, just put it in the comments and let me know what you think. But today I'm going to show you how I took this and turned it into this. We are going to be doing a full sewing from beginning to end of a glueless 2x6 closure. And if you like my shirt, the link for it will be in my bio as well. So make sure you guys go and check that out. I am a hairstylist, so I give professional tips for you to, if you're a stylist, for you to take and use on your clients. And if you're a client, for you to take and share with your hairstylist. We do healthy sew-ins. So let's get into it. First, you want to find your part, and all of your braids are going to start from that point. Here, we're doing a center part. I have a similar video with a more detailed explanation of the braiding pattern. There's a very logical explanation for why I braided it this way, which is to reduce tension, but also the front braids are the anchor for the closure, so that needs to be braided right up on the hairline. Here, you see me crisscrossing those two ends and stitching them right into that space. This helps to close up that gap so you have a more seamless install and also relieves some tension for those braids that have been pulled up. You have to be very mindful if you are using this as a protective style. We do not want any unnecessary tightness and any unnecessary tension. So all of these little details play a huge part. And the final product of your braiding pattern should look something like this. Now we are going to sew on the weaving net. Everybody gets a net. I do not compromise on this part. Normally, I like to use the net that is by Red Kiss, or I think the brand is the Challenger. They are more soft and flexible, but not every beauty supply store has them. This one is a little bit more stiff, but it gets the job done. So when I'm doing a closure sew-in, I like to just sew the net around the area where the lace is going to be. So I'm leaving out about 1 inch to 1/2 inch because I'm doing a 2-inch closure. So about 1/2 inch on each side. That way, when I do sew down the closure, I still have some net to sew it onto in those spaces where her parting is. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch the net all the way around. Using a weaving net helps the stylist to sew anywhere versus just being able to sew on the braid. This allows for better track placement, which helps the install to lay and fall better. It also creates a barrier between the client's hair and the tracks, where you have the beards at the beginning of the track that can catch into your hair. The net prevents that from happening, which prevents tangling and breakage of the hair. Now, when you wash your hair, naturally the braids will swell because of the water, and the net helps to hold your braids in place, which helps your install to last a little bit longer. Now, what you see me doing here is cutting off the net. I have now cut out where the part is going to be. I don't like to use stocking caps because in a matter of days, that stocking cap is going to be rolled up underneath your net. So I like to just use the client's scalp and line the closure up to the scalp. So what I did was fold the closure in half so I can have it even on both sides when I place it. And you can see me lining it up. I'm leaving about 1/2 inch of the lace in front of the hairline. This client has a lot of natural baby hairs, so I'm putting it all the way in front of her baby hairs, and I'm having her hold it. As you can see, I adjusted her hand so it's not in my way. The elbow has to be pointing towards the front. I'm going to be pulling on the side that I am on, and I need her to hold it in place so it doesn't budge. So I'm going to leave those flaps, and I'm going to start sewing the lace right where the first braid is. And I'm going to continue sewing that back. When I'm done sewing the side down, I'm then going to leave the needle connected. I'm going to start a new needle, and then I'm going to go on to the other side. When I'm done stitching down the other side, I now have 2 needles in the head,
and I'm going to stitch until they meet up in the back. This technique helps the closure to stay in place so it's not moving from the position that I placed it. So here's a close-up of what I'm doing. You can see the lace left out in front. You can see all of her natural baby hairs. The lace is in front of her baby hairs as much as I can get it. You don't want to leave too much of a flap because then it's going to start bunching as you sew. So I'm done with this side. I'm going to knot the needle and sew the other side with a new needle. I did not record sewing down the entire thing, but it's just as I explained. And this is how it should look. Now on to the flaps. What you want to do is start on the piece of the lace that is closest to the braid. You stick the needle through the lace and then you stick the needle through the braid, and you are going to continue doing that along the lace. So the further down you move on the lace is the further down you want to move on the braid. Now, I didn't mention the braid is very important. You want it to be as close to the hairline as possible. So when braiding your first 2 perimeter braids, you want it to kind of be over directed towards the front of the hairline so that you don't have any space. As you can see, there's no space in front of the braid. It's just all braid. So now I think I'm done with this side. So what I'm doing is looking in the hair to see if there's any buckling on the lace. And then I see a space that is buckling. So what I do is I stick my needle right into that gape. And I do the same stitch technique and I just pull it down to make it a little bit tighter. Now, as you can see here, it is now a lot flatter. You don't see that lump there anymore. Make sure you always double check and get the bubbles out. You might have to undo it. And if that's the case, undo it and do it again. It takes no time to cut out the stitches and redo the closure. Trust me, the client would appreciate it and the install would be more seamless and you will be more proud of your work. So now we're going to go on to the other side. We're doing the same exact thing. So I'm sticking it in the lace first, then through the braid, and then I'm putting the needle through the loop that is created just to lock that in. So the further down I move on the lace, I'm going to move a little further down on the braid. So it's kind of going to create like a little triangle with the thread. And the furthest tip of the lace should be the furthest down on the braid. You just continue this until the flap is completely sewn down and make sure you check the lace for any lumps and bumps. Now I'm going to find the part that I made on her hair, and there you have it, a seamless middle part. You can't even see the lace. What lace? This is what they mean when they say a glueless, sewn down lace closure, that you can't even see the lace. And of course, a HD closure is important to get this seamless look. Of course, you can use transparent or any other type of lace, but that just requires a little bit more to conceal. HD blends into most skin complexions without any makeup or lace tint. And because she does have a lot of natural baby hair, you just saw me kind of pull some of the baby hairs out. If a client has a lot of baby hair or a low hairline that you were unable to put the closure in front of it, just make sure you part the hair where the part should be and separate it and incorporate it into the closure and act as if that is the baby hairs that some stylists like to cut and paste down. Now we are getting started with sewing in the tracks. As you can see, I'm starting towards the front of her hair. So I like to have length all around my client's head. Some stylists, they put the longest bundle only in the back. I bring mine all the way up to the temple just so that we can also have length in the front of our hair. And yes, I am going to cut and layer the front, but because we do have length in the front, it'll help the ends to not be thin and stringy. So we would have some weight in the front of our sewing as well as nice thick fullness in the back. Right now, the tracks are doubled, so I'm about to show you how I do a doubled sewing without cutting the tracks. You want to keep it doubled all the way up into the temple where you think it'll match the other side. And then you're going to let go of the track on the top and continue sewing the track underneath, which is the track that would be against her skin. Keep on sewing that about 1 inch or so, and then we're going to flip it. This makes it thinner to flip, so you're not going to have a double track that's folded over. Only one track is folded over, which helps it to be thinner and more seamless. Then you just continue sewing. You make sure to stitch that first folded track nice and tight so that it is flat and seamless. And as you continue on, you're going to pick up the next piece and continue your double sew in. Sorry for my hand being in the way. I am a hairstylist first, and I'm trying this content creation thing, so hopefully I'm explaining it well to where even though my hand is blocking it, you're still understanding and getting the process. And if you made it this far, make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'm trying to be monetized. I've been on here for years and still trying to get monetized. So help a sister out and make sure you like, share with your hairstylist, share with your hairstylist friends. I would greatly appreciate it, and it would motivate me to keep pushing out good content like this. So now you see that I have grabbed the second track underneath, and we're just continuing on. So one of the main reasons that I love using the net is because there's not braids everywhere on the client's head. We have partings and spacings, but the net allows me to sew anywhere, so I can have better track placement and the sewing would fall the way I want it to. Now, as you can also see, the net isn't tight. The net is pretty slack because it is a square going on a round surface, so it is going to be slack and baggy, but that is a good thing because as you sew, everything gets tighter. The net being loose and baggy like this helps to reduce tension on the client's hair. But when the install is done, everything will be flat, smooth, no lumps, no bumps, because as I said, as I'm stitching, everything just naturally tightens up. Now, if I had sewed the net on tight to begin with, and as I'm stitching, it's getting tighter, the client will be uncomfortable and possibly take the sewing out the same night. So you want to make sure your braids are firm, but not tight to where it's pulling your client's brain and her thoughts. And you want to make sure the net is secure, but not super tight. It doesn't need to be super flush to this client's head. Now I'm getting back around to the front, and as you can see, I only have a little bit of this bundle left. So now I'm going to use my judgment. Is it long enough to reach the other side, or is it going to leave the install uneven? Because I do have 3 different lengths that I am putting in her head. Maybe if I had 2 of the same lengths, then I will continue. I will fold it over and continue. But because I have 3 different lengths, I'm going to use my judgment, sew it up a little bit on the temple to where it meets the other side. As you can see, I'm measuring it so it can meet the other side, and then I'm going to cut it. So I cut the tracks very little, but sometimes you do need to cut your tracks. And look, she's looking at me like, I know she's not about to cut my bundles. Yes, I am. It's needed. So after you cut it, you want to make sure that the end is nice and secure so it doesn't unravel, and also that it's nice and flat and seamless, and to make sure that the end is not sticking out. So make sure you secure the ends. What I'm doing here is I just pull the thread through the back of the sewing just so that there's no ends sticking out in the front. Now, you see that the back of the head has a little bit more space than the side of the head does, because our heads are ovular shape for the most part. So that little piece of track that I cut off in the front, I'm going to stick it in the back to help make the sewing space a little bit more symmetrical. So I'm just going to fill in that space, because normally we have more space in the back than we do on the sides. So just stick that piece in the back and make sure that it lines up with the track underneath so there's no spaces. So you want everything to connect. We don't want any floating tracks or tracks that are not connected to any other track below it, because you can snag that while you're brushing and combing your hair, because it's kind of a loose end. But when the end is touching the previous row, it just gives it a more seamless look, and it is smoother to the touch. And she's on the phone, boo loving. She's not talking to me, so don't pay her any mind. Apparently, this person is just giving her the time of her life. But back to the sewing, as you can see, I'm making sure that this current track is touching the row right underneath it. And because it is the end of this bundle, that folded piece, because it is doubled, is a little bit of a loop. So just make sure you stitch it good so it's nice and flat. I thought I was doing 3 bundles on her, but I actually just did 2, because she does have a small head and she has a closure which takes up some of the space, even though it is just a 2x6. So now you can either bring the next bundle up to the closure, or you can do it as I'm doing, and I'm doing it right above the previous row, and I'm kind of going to stack them up until I close that space. So because this is the last bundle, I'm only using 2. I'm going to single this one just to make sure that it all fits. And I guess I should add that I did also color this hair. It was pretty simple. What I did first, it started off in its natural black color. What I did first was I soap capped it, which is the correct term for when you mix bleach with shampoo and a little bit of water. I just did that to give it a soft lighten without damaging the hair, without it being an overly long, drawn out process going piece by piece. And so I can get the hair lifted a little bit, but not too bright. So I took it up to like a brown, and then I went in with the L'Oreal High Lift color. I don't remember which one I used, either magenta or fire hot, fire red. I probably mixed those two together, and I just put it on here and let it sit for a little bit. And voila, we have a nice wine burgundy color, which goes perfect with her complexion. So what you see me doing here is I'm about to fold the track and go back the other way, but you want to bring it up a little bit and then fold it over and continue back down. So by you curving the track, it helps the hair to fall towards the client's face so that they don't have that boxy middle part look. So you want to make sure you curve the tracks in the front a little bit, and then you just go back and you continue the process until you're done. I don't really have much to say here. I'm just sewing the tracks, going around the rest of her head. But as you can see, the net has gotten a lot tighter and everything is nice and smooth and seamless. As as I'm coming around to the front, there is no right or wrong way to do this. You kind of just have to think about your final product and how you want your sewing to look and how your next track placement will be, where your next track will go. So as I get close to the front, I'm going to decide, do I want to bring it up to the closure? Do I want to cut it? Or do I want to continue to just stack the rows a little bit? So I've decided to continue to stack the rows only because there's a lot more space in the back than there is in the front. So if I was to bring the closure, if I was to bring the track up to the closure, I would either have to cut the tracks in the back, or they won't all connect, or it'll just be too much science. So I'm just going to continue going around until I get that space smaller, with trying to minimize the cutting as much as possible. So now I'm done. I'm going to cut this track because it is now connecting the closure. Not all closures have this white space here, but this one does. So I want to make sure that it's covered. And I have a little piece left, as you can see. If I had 2 tracks left, that would be perfect. I'll put one in the space where you see the braids are, and then I'll put the other one where that little white thing is. But sometimes you just have to do what you have to do, and because she has a closure on, nothing is going to be visible. There's going to be no spaces. So I'm kind of going to lay this track in between the space. I'm just going to cut that space in half. And then, like I said, because she has on a closure, once it is parted and everything is molded down, the hair from the closure would conceal everything up top. And now this is our final product. As you see, there is a little white space there. You could take a Sharpie and color it in. Maybe you could have dyed it before you put it in the client's hair just to give it like a little tint. But I'm not going to do anything to it. Like I said, it'll be covered once I bring the hair down. And this is one of the most protective styles. No glue, fully sewn in, no leave out, not even the edges. But the way that I installed it, even if the wind blows, there's no braid visible and there's no track visible. All of your hair is away. You don't have to worry about trying to flat iron to get it to blend. And you still have a nice, clean, seamless look. So now let's get into the styling. I use very minimal product. I like nice, movable, flexible hair. We don't do stiff hair over here, so you're just going to see me use a wax stick to lay the closure down and a little bit of hairspray. And that's about it. I think on her, I used a little bit of serum, and that is only because her hair is colored, so I want to make sure it has a nice polished look. But I am a minimalist when it comes to using product, so we can get a nice, natural, flowy look. I'm not going to talk over this piece. I'm just going to let it run so you guys can see what I'm going to do and show you guys the final product. As I was styling, I felt a little bit of a lump where I sewed the closure, because we have the closure stitching, the end of the closure, the end of the track, all in the same spot. So I just used the hot comb just to flatten it a little bit, and we are back in business.
Wait, hold on, don't close it out yet. Hopefully you enjoyed that video and you got some value from it and you were able to learn and take it to your stylist and take it to your clients. But if you want to learn how to do a 5x5 glueless closure, check out this video right here. The 5x5 will be more ideal for the clients that are a little bit more thin up top and maybe their density starts down here. A 5x5 is ideal for that. Or for the clients that have less of a hairline, check out this video right here. So you can learn how to do the glueless frontal. These videos I did make a while ago, but they are timeless and the technique still stands. So check them out, let me know what you think, and until next time.